Your grace, I thank you for your mercy, God. I thank you for your love. Thank you for favor, oh God. God, if I had 10,000 tongues, I couldn't say enough thank yous and I couldn't praise you enough. So in this song, I'll simply tell you I love you. And God, I thank you for everything you've done. Lord, there's so many things that you've done for me. Blessings unconditional, they seem to overtake me. Your hand of mercy proving faithful and true. Jesus, how can I express my thanks to you for your grace and kindness, oh, agent of days. I'll give you thanks, oh Lord, now and always. I just want to say thank you for your love. Thank you. Thank you for the blood. Thanks to you for all of the times that you brought me through. Lord, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for your grace. Thank you, Lord, for keeping me safe. Thanks to you that I can share the good news of a Savior, to give someone a reason just to tell you thanks.
All right. All right. And good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Depending on when you are listening to this session today, my name is Oliver Blue, and I am your temporary guide, your temporary host. I'm your temporary coach. And I only say temporary because I know that within all of us, there is one that is permanent. There's a permanent guide, there's a permanent teacher. There is within all of us, there's a reality of the truth of who we are. And so I'm only serving as a temporary reminder of the one life and the one love that we all share together. And when I say all, I mean all. There's none excluded. Because what we have been finding out in these lessons that we have been sharing for over 200 days now is that if we're really going to embrace the truth, if we're really going to embrace reality, we have to come to grips that there is but the absolutely one thing. And depending on your conditioning, you may call it God, you may call it Buddha, you may call it Jesus, you may call it, we call our conviction by many names. But the conviction is not in the name. But the conviction is in the reality that there is a supreme being, there is a supreme life that we all share. There's a reality that we all share. Even though we appear here on earth as these separate entities with separate bodies and having a separate idea, separate will and different experiences. What is at the source of all of that? What is at the cause of all of that? Is a life, is a love. There is a source that is fueling all of that. And we kind of lump all of the different iterations of that under the name of God. Okay. And then even as we put use that name, God, we but limit even what we're talking about here, because what we're talking about here is undescribable. What we're talking about here is, as soon as we put a name to it or a label to it or a tag on it, we limit it. But what we're talking about is the unlimited love. We're talking about the all intelligence, the unlimited intelligence. We're talking about the absolute source of all creation. And we have, for many years, many hundreds and thousands of years, humanity has tried to figure out what that is and what it looks like and what's the reality of it and what our relationship is to our very own self, our very own nature. But what we have concluded over these 200 plus lessons that we have looked into and practiced in the Course in Miracles is that there's only one source. There's only one life. There's only one provider. There's only one creator. There's only one energy. There's only one reality. And that we all share equally. It makes no sense until we embrace the reality that we all have an equal share in this life, in this awareness, in this consciousness that we all share. As strong a signal as the world, and as strong a signal and as strong a message as the world send to us that we are divided. And it is sending some very strong messages right now. But as strong as those messages are, it doesn't change the truth. We all remain as God created us. We all remain as we were in the beginning. And as we were in the beginning, we were not, these individuated separate bodies in a world that, has its basis in separation, has its basis in all the differences that we appear to be. But in the beginning, there was no time and there was no space. There was no form. There was no object. So before one experience, one object, before any objective experience that one ever had, before there was a birth, before there was a time and space, before there was a world, that one source extended itself. And in that process, he calls it creation. And in that extension of himself, it was just a herself or itself. Because remember here, in reality, there are no genders. There's no male nor female, born nor free, Jew nor Greek, nor politician, nor Republicans or Democrats, or black or white, or all the labels that we have created, or that we have made. There's only this one grand source of all things, and we call it, again, for the purposes of these lessons, we call that God. And for the purposes for Course in Miracle, the Course in Miracle refer to that one source, that one life, that one being, God. And now we have come to understand that it was God that created humanity, created all living things. But more so humanity in its own image and its own likeness. So that basically means, without any tinkering, without any altering, without any interpretation, that what God extended is his very own self. And he called his very own self his creation. He called his very own self, for terms of just identification, he called his very own self the Son of God, or the children of God, or the Christ. Doesn't matter what you call them. We have become that which God is. And so no way you look at it, God did not extend it. It did not create us as an inferior. entity, but God created us like unto himself. So that means that we have equality with God and we have equality with each other. And I know that's a big pill to swallow for a lot of religious minded thinking. I know I came from that place. But there's no real relationship on any level, even in our human experience, where there's husband and wife, or where there's the parent and the child relationship, or the therapist and the patient relationship, or where there's the employer and employee relationship. If the essence of the relationship is not equality, then there's no real relationship. You wonder why. We wonder why. So having long-term relationships are so difficult. Having intimate relationships are so difficult. Why the marriage institution runs about a 35% rate where couples stay together. Why is it so difficult? Because the idea of equality is not at the foundation of those relationships. And where there's no equality, there's no real relationship. And so what you have in those relationships at the foundation is fear. There's a fear of separation. There's a fear of abandonment. There's a fear of, not being equally, looked upon. There's all kinds of fears and that are open to our thinking, because where there's no surety, there's no absolute equality. There cannot be real relationships. It cannot be. It's impossible. It requires equality. And that's why to not embrace the reality that you have equality with your Creator, to not embrace it, it is the cause of the anxiety. It's a cause of the fear. It's the cause of the questionings that we have about, am I okay? Am I, is there something wrong with me? Or, has God held something back? Or is God holding something back? Or why am I holding back? Or even in your relationships, we ask the same question because there's not absolute surety. There's not absolute certainty. And there's not absolute surety and certainty because there's not an absolute acceptance of the reality of equality. So you can say you heard it here. Where there's no equality, there's no real relationship. There's no lasting relationship. There's always this doubt. There's always this, idea of, again, fear of abandonment, fear of being taken advantage of, fear of being unfairly treated. That's where it comes from, because we don't embrace the reality of equality. And where we don't embrace it, where it needs to be embraced initially, is with our relationship with ourselves and our Creator. Even Paul, the Apostle Paul in the Bible, in Philippians chapter 2, and even Jesus in his incarnation, he talked about that, as being so critical. If you look in Philippians chapter 2, for you Bible scholars, and you may not be a Bible scholar, but that's okay. You may just be a Course in Miracles student, or you may be it doesn't matter what your past experience. These lessons are designed for everyone. We're not here advocating one religion over another. We're here in a process of being transformed by the renewing of our mind, that we may know, that we may experience what that good, acceptable, and perfect will of God is, which is the will that we want for ourselves. Because there's no one that has a grander interest in your well-being and your happiness than your Creator. But in Philippians 2, verse 5, Paul said it this way. He said, let this mind be in you that was also in Christ. So it's a matter of allowing the mind of Christ to be in us. It's a decision or choice that we make. And the great thing about life that we all are finding out is the one thing that we have and that we know that we have. And then we know that we can exercise within ourselves. I didn't say exercise it against someone else, or I'm talking about within our own self. The one thing that we do have is the power of choice, the power to choose. We have the power to choose what we accept or what we reject. No one can take that away from you. They can lock you in the deepest dungeon. They can torture you in the most unhumane way. But still, at the end of the day, you have a choice to choose in the matter how you're going to experience every experience that you have in life. It is your choice. It cannot be taken away. It's not like a finger that could be cut off, or it's not like, something physical that can be taken away from you. But the power to choose is the power of God. We have the power to choose, and God placed it in such a way in all of us that it cannot be taken away. So we have the power to accept or reject that we desire, that which is true or not true about us. And so Paul says here that allow, or choose for the mind of Christ. He said, let it be in you, the same way that it was in Christ. He said in verse 5, he said, let this mind be in you, which was also in Christ Jesus. So that tells me that Jesus made a choice to allow the mind of Christ, which is referencing to the mind of God or the thoughts of God. Basically saying, let the thoughts of God be in you that was also in him. He made a choice. And today, here on this 30th day of August 2022, your power to choose has not been taken away from you. You may not like everything that you see out in the world, but the one thing that is for sure is that you have the power to accept or reject anything that doesn't align with the truth of who you are. And that can never be taken away from anyone. So we have to make a decision about our thought life. That's what the mind is there for. That's where our thoughts originate. That's where our thoughts are meditated on. So we have a choice of how we use our mind. Are we going to use our mind for the purposes of reality, for the purpose of truth, for the purpose that is in our best interest? Or are we going to allow our minds to be undisciplined and to wander and to think on things that are not lovely, that are not true, that are not praiseworthy, that are not of good report, that think on things that we don't even want for ourselves, let alone want for others? So it's a matter of discipline in the mind. It's a matter of being transformed by the renewing of the mind. And this is the process that we've been going through for the last 200 days, going through these workbook lessons out of A Course in Miracles. Oh, by the way, that's right. Today's lesson is workbook lesson 190 out of A Course in Miracles. This is what we're going in, but I'm doing a little preference here. So he said, let this mind be in you that was also in Christ Jesus, who being in the form of God. So here he's saying that when Jesus was a man walking the earth, just like you and me, or humans walking the earth, it says, who being in the form of, it says, being in the form of God, that when Jesus was a man, he was in the form of God, or he was representing the God or the creator. Yeah, that man in God. So here he was acknowledging that he was appearing in the person of God, that God and humanity and divinity was one. He was acknowledging that. So it says, not when he was glorified or resurrected or ascended did he appear in the person of God, but right here it says, being in the form of God. When he was a man, you may be a male or a female. You are in the form of God. In this moment, we didn't say that form is God, but you're saying you appearing in the form of God. So the Course says that we are love in form. We are the love of God that's in form in this experience that we're having called humanity. You may not see yourself that way, but that doesn't change the truth. of our reality. So, who being in the form of God, in other words, while he was a man walking the earth like you and me, he thought it not robbery to be equal with God. Jesus, as a man, did not think that he was robbing God by thinking that he had equality with God. In other words, Jesus embraced his reality. He embraced the truth of his creation. And now it's our time in 2024, 2022. Here we are. In 2022, in these same human suits that he had. He had one of these human suits. Do you think that you're robbing God if you said that you have equality with God? Just think about that. How did that make you feel? If it makes you shrink, to say that's not possible, and that's what I'm saying. That's where the problem is in our relationships. That's the problem we have even in our idea of a loving Father or a loving God. Because again, where there is no equality, there is no real relationship. There's this sense of separation. There's this sense of superiority and inferiority. That's why you see that played out in our world today. You see it on huge display on this 30th day of August in the world that we live in. There's some that have a sense of what superiority, and then there's some that have this sense of what inferiority. Why? Because of inequality. And it will always show up that way. And some of the effects of it will be oppression. Some of the other effects of it will be prejudice, prejudgment, unfairly treated. All of these are the effects. These are all effects. They're not the cause. And so you can't fix the effects, or you can't solve the problem by fixing the effects. The effects can't be fixed out in the world. The effects can only be changed by going to the source or the cause of the thing. And the cause of it is the way we think. We don't embrace the mind of Christ, or we don't allow that mind that was in Jesus to be in us. We see ourselves as inferior to God. And then we also see ourselves as inferior to each other. And then in our even personal and family relationship, business relationship, community relationships, we see ourselves as not equal. You see, and so we play with the shenanigans of superiority and inferiority. And thus we have the world you see of war and fighting. And all kinds of, we're seeing things happen now in this world. They call it, the word they use is it's unprecedented. Well, it's not really unprecedented. It just continued to take on different forms. And because we're in what we call modern society, we can have the direct experience of the effect that we see in the world immediately while it's happening. We can tune right in and see the extreme effect of the cause of inequality. And it began with humanity having an inferiority complex where God is concerned. So until that is healed and corrected, you can never correct it in the world. You cannot solve problems at the same level of thinking when the problem was created. There has to be a transcending or a transformation in our thinking. And I'm just telling you that this course in miracles that we are going through, I thank God for it. Because there was a time when I thought this way. There was a time when I feared God. I feared humanity. I feared a lot of things because I thought in that way. I thought in a way of inequality. And I'm not just talking about racial inequality. I'm talking about human inequality. There's inequality at every level in this world, where there's gender or race or nationality or, religious or political. It's all over the board. These are all effects. These are not causes. These are all effects. What is the cause? Is that we, as a collective being, have not embraced our true identity. We have gone about to make a self that has made a world that is based on separation in the belief that we have separated from our Creator and from one another. And therefore, we play out this way of thinking that creates a world that we now embrace. So in order to change the effects, we have to go back to the root cause. And that's what Paul is doing here when he says that Jesus thought it not robbery to be equal with God. And so we see the result of him thinking that way, the impact that he had in his incarnation and the impact that he's still having on all the humanity. But somewhere this message, this reality got lost in the message. And then if you look in, I think it's John, I can't remember, one book's in John. I said there's a scripture in John that talks about Jesus said that because he called God his Father, it said that made him equal with God. And he said that's why the religious people of the time decided to destroy him. Because the idea of God being a loving Father had never been introduced to humanity until Jesus brought that message. Because even in the natural, when one says that he has that one identify one as his father, basically that's an announcement, or that's a declaration that this one I have equality with. To say that God is your father is to say that you have equality with God. And they say this is why they sought to kill him. And even as I'm talking here, I mean, I don't know who's listening, but I hope someone's listening. That is the problem. We don't see ourselves as God created us. We see ourselves as we have made ourselves, or the world have conditioned us to be, but not based on truth, not based on light. And so until we embrace that foundation, until we become fully convinced about who we are, until you become fully convinced about your identity. And I'm not talking about the identity that your parents gave you. I'm not talking about your body identification. That is so temporary. That is so short-lived. I'm talking about your eternal self. I'm talking about your infinite self. I'm talking about the essence of who you really are as a spiritual being, as a timeless and formless being. I'm talking about what God was referring to when he spoke to Jeremiah back in the book of Jeremiah, when he says, before you were born in your mother's womb, before you were in your mother's womb, God told Jeremiah that he knew Jeremiah. And that means that that Jeremiah existed before he was before there was any form, before there was time and space, that Jeremiah existed, and God knew Jeremiah. That means what God was saying, not only to Jeremiah, but to all of us, is that we are timeless and we're formless beings. We're not a body. We are eternal beings. And God knows all of us. Why? Because God is the one that created us. And not as separate beings. But God created us as one being. And in that one being, God said, that one being is my very own self. So God gave us all that God is in our creation. But somehow, some way, we lost awareness of that coming into this space. We lost the remembrance of that coming into this limited space called time and place space. And so we're here now. And we're going through these workbook lessons because all of us that has been on this spiritual journey, whatever that journey looked like, on whatever path that may have looked like, we've all gotten to a point where it doesn't work. There's something wrong. There's something missing. There's something broken. There's a self-image that I have of myself that I don't like. There's a relationship that I'm supposed to have with a loving father that is just not there. What is the missing piece? The missing piece is not out there. The missing piece is in the loss of remembrance of our true identity. And so I'm here. So we're going through this course as a reminder to remind ourselves of who we really are, to retrain the way we think, to think along the thoughts of God, to think along the thoughts of reality of what is true and what is real and what is eternal. And so here we find ourselves on this beautiful, gorgeous August day in 2022, looking into the perfect law of liberty. There's a sense of wanting to be free. Even Jesus said, "Who I set free is free indeed." So if we're not experiencing the freedom indeed, why aren't we? That's why we're investigating. And we have come to find out that it was always in the way that we thought. It was in our thinking. It was in the way that we accepted ideas about ourselves that was not true. And so today we're going to look at workbook lesson 190. And because I spent 30 minutes just talking, I may not get through all of it. So this might be 190.1. Part 1. So it says, so the idea for today, or the thought for today, because every lesson is a thought. It's a thought of God. It's the way the course is. And I love the course for the way it is. It's a course. We're learning. We're taking a course. And it teaches us something directly. It's not where you got to go in and figure out from someone's life and someone's scenario, well, what's the lesson here? Or what are they trying to teach us here? Or what is this showing me? No, this is direct. The course is very non-specific. It's principle-centered. It teaches us what the principle. So we don't have to read a story and try to figure out what are the lessons in the story. No, it is very direct. And I love that. I like direct. I don't like to have to figure it out. I like direct. So the course needs no interpretation. It is what it says. So today's thought is, I choose the joy of God instead of pain. Notice now. I choose joy. And that joy is of God instead of pain, which is of the world, or of the thinking of the world. Joy comes from the thinking of God. Pain comes from the thinking of this world. It doesn't come from the world. It comes from the thinking of the world. Joy comes from the thoughts of God. There's a scripture in Psalm that I love, absolutely love. I think it's Psalm 16:11. I think it is Psalm 16:11. I love this. And this is a very notable scripture because we've all had it quoted, the joy, talking about the joy of God. And this one says, again, Psalm 16:11. It says, "Thou wilt show me the path of life. This is God speaking. Or this is David speaking, saying that God would show him the path of life. And then in the second part of this scripture, it tells you what David understanding of is what is the path of life. He says, "Thou wilt show me the path of life." What is the right path to living? This is what David said. I want to know the right path to living. Who doesn't want to know the right path of living? If you're like me, I got so discouraged with trying to figure out what life was all about in my own head, in my own thinking, looking out in the world and trying to figure it out. But when I realized that I was looking at the wrong source, that was an effect. I needed to look at the cause. And I began to look inward in myself. And then when I found that there is a creator that knows the path of life and that he would teach me the path of life, then I began a spiritual journey 30-something years ago, 31 years to be exact, that I've been on for 31 years. And it continued to unfold to me. And so the response to, "Wilt thou show me this path of life?" And the response to that is this: "In thy presence is fullness of joy." That's the path of life, is remaining in the presence of God. So where is the presence of God? The presence of God is everywhere. God is everywhere present. So that means that no matter where you are, joy is present. God is present. And that presence comes through understanding. And that presence comes through knowing the truth. That the Spirit of God is everywhere. That the presence of God is everywhere. It is but a choice. He says, "In thy presence there is fullness of joy. And at thy right hand there are pleasures forevermore." So here, as we look at the lesson or the thought today, I choose the joy of God. The joy of God is a choice, just like we said earlier. The one thing that has been given to you that can never be taken away is your ability to choose. And what you choose will determine your experience in life. And here David learned early that it is the joy of the Lord. And what is the joy of the Lord? It is knowing the truth. That's what joy comes from. It comes from knowing the truth about who you are. It's about embracing and accepting the reality of your equality with your Creator and with everyone. Regardless of what happens in society, society won't teach you that. It will teach you that that doesn't exist. But in reality, what God created is equal. What God created is Himself. That which guarantees that equality remains intact, and that He extended His very own self and called His very own extension, His very own self. He calls it His Son or His creation, or what we call the I Am, which is what you are and what I am. And so it is in the presence of God. It is in His presence. That means that when we are consciously aware at all times that we are in the presence of God, as not being something separate from us, but as being our very own self, our very own life, the life that we share, the love that we share, the breath that we breathe. The soundness of mind, the wholeness of spirit, the reality that we are eternal beings, that we're timeless and formless. See, it is this awareness, it's this revelation. Paul said it this way. He said, it was held back in time past, but now has been revealed to the saints that Christ in you, or Christ as you, that is the hope of glory, that God and you are one. That's why Jesus called him his Father, making him equal with God. That's why, maybe unknowing to you, when you call God your Father, that makes you equal with him. When you call me your brother, that affirms our equality. But when we go about trying to make a difference between each other based on politics or religion or race or any other divide, what we're doing is rejecting the truth of who we are. What we're doing is we're rejecting the reality of our equality. And then we wonder why we don't have peace in our life. Why do I feel so out of balance? Why do I feel so much anxiety? Why do I feel like there is not a real oneness between me and my Creator? Why do I feel so alienated to my brother? Well, the reason why is that we have rejected the truth. We have rejected the truth of the reality of who we are. And David said, it's not only that it is in the presence of God that there is fullness of joy, but he says, even there are pleasures all over the place forevermore when you come into the awareness of the truth that you and God are one, that you and your brother and your sister, you are one, you are equal, you're the same. But when we don't embrace that, we make a world like the world that we've made, that it is divided at every level. They say the nation that we live in here is the most polarized as it's ever been, the most. And we have surpassed our wildest dream where technology is concerned. We have advanced in science and technology and in the arts and the science, and we've advanced in about every area of life. But when it comes to the relationship between ourselves, and when it comes to our relationship with our Creator, we have not advanced in many cases. There's more fear, there's more anxiety, there's more sickness, there's more disease, there's more poverty, there's more hatred, there's more vitriol multiplied. So we have not somehow advanced in our thinking about ourselves and about our Creator and about each other as we have in things that are made, that are temporary, that are inanimate. Why is that? And it can't be fixed out there. It can only be fixed in here. It only can be fixed in having a shift in the way we think. And that shift has to come from every thought of God. And so now we have but another tool, another way, not another religion. Course in Miracles is not a religion. This is a tool that's been given to us by Jesus to help us to change the way we think. That's why he gave it to us in a workbook. That's why he gave it to us in a course. He said, require study. He said, as much as we have taught ourselves to be against ourselves and have taught ourselves to hide and put blocks and veils to block out the truth, to block out the light. We've done it for thousands and thousands of years, and it's been passed down through generation to generation. He said it's going to take study. It's going to take vigilance. It's going to take a commitment to want to know the truth and to spend time learning the truth. And so he gave us this course called A Course in Miracles. And what is the miracle? The miracle is when we shift our perception about ourselves, about our Creator, and about each other. When we just shift it from dark to light, from unreality to reality. He said, when we make that small shift, everything changes. And he said, everything changes without. He said, because within, nothing has been changed. We remain as God created us. We wake up from the dream of separation. That's what I mean when I say we wake up. We've been asleep at the wheel. All humanity. Jesus called it, you must be born again. That's what the way he said it. Buddha talked about the enlightenment. Of course, talks about enlightenment. He said enlightenment is but a recognition of the truth. It's but a recognition. And it's the most natural. It's the most natural thing that can happen to us. Because without the recognition of the truth, we're going to think of ourselves in such subterranean ways. We're going to think of our brother and sister in so divided ways. Without this shift in our thinking, we're going to think of God in such a way that is antithetical to reality. We don't realize that we're cutting off the hand that feeds us. And I'm not talking about a physical hand. The truth is what feeds us. The truth is our very life. But when we deny it because of what tradition, because of tradition, because of, what has been, when we deny it because, we have this, this commitment to error and to mistake. You notice I didn't say sin because according to the Course, there is no sin. We're just making the errors and we're just making mistakes. And because errors and mistakes can be corrected. Sin, the concept of sin, which we made, it cannot be corrected. It has to be dealt with through death, according to what we made, according to the law of sin and death. And thank God Jesus came to say what? We're no longer under the law of sin and death, which we put ourselves under by rejecting the truth. He said we're no longer under the law of sin and death, but we're under the law of the Spirit of life, which has made us free from the law of sin and death. So we're now free to choose and to embrace and to accept the truth that is true always about us. And it's time for us to do that. It's the only way out of pain. It's our only way out of it's our only way out of self-suffering. It's our only way out of self-deception. It's our only way out of holding on to a vision about ourselves and about each other and about our God and about this world. It's our only way out of holding a vision of darkness. It's our only way out of fear. It's our only way out of this feeling so foreign, feeling so much as an alien, feeling so uncomfortable with life. It's our only way out. It's the truth. And so we share these truths, which are self-evident. I don't have to convince you of what I'm talking about. It's self-evident. It's already within you. I'm just here to remind you. The truth resonates with itself, and it's in all of us. No one is excluded. This eternal love that we all share can never be taken from any of us. In fact, Paul said it this way. He said that nothing can separate us from the love that we share, from the love of God, which he demonstrated. No one, no thing, not even our dream of separation, not even our many lifetimes of not embracing the truth. Not even all the fantasies, all of the hallucinations, all of the wild imaginings that have gone through our mind. None of that can separate us from the love of God. None of that can change reality. And that's the good news. The good news is we can have an experience in life that is not very loving. We can have an experience that seems so temporal. We can have an experience in life that the vision is only from the cradle to the grave. And God is saying that even that cannot separate us from the love that we are, from the love that we share. None of that can change the eternalness that we are. Nothing can change the immortality that is with all of us. Because to change any of that would be the death of God. And how can we get to that insane thought? Because to reject and to deny the truth of who we are as eternal beings, as one with God and with each other, to reject that is to say that God is dead. But I'm here to say, I'm here to witness, I'm here to testify that God is alive. Because God is alive in me. God is alive in you. And I'm not talking about your body aliveness. I'm talking about the reality that you are aware, you are conscious. That one thing you are absolutely sure of. You may not be sure of why you are conscious. You may not be sure of why you are aware, but you're certainly sure that you are aware and that you're conscious and that you exist. You are aware that I am. You may not be aware of why you are, but you are absolutely sure that you are. Why? Because you have the consciousness and you have the awareness that comes from God only. See, without being conscious and without being aware, there is no life. And the sensation of a body that no longer functions, and we lay them to rest. We put them off, we take them and we either burn them or bury them, whatever. Well, you're not burning and burying your consciousness and awareness. That's just the body. That's not who you were anyway. Your awareness of the I am, your consciousness will remain just as alive as it is in this very moment. You will always be conscious. You will always be aware. Why? Because you're one with God. God is always conscious and always aware. That's the part of you that is like God. That is your formless self. That is your timeless self. It transcends time and space. Who you are transcends your experience here. Your experience here is just that. It's just an experience. It's not who you are. It doesn't define you. As hard as we try to create an image of ourselves, to make something of ourselves, to add something to ourselves, it doesn't change who you really are. Jesus said it on many occasions that we can't add anything to our statue. God did a complete work in us. We are complete in what God did in creation. God gave us all of who He is, all of what He is, and all of why He is. If we are not knowing of that, if we have rejected it, or we have not been exposed to that, well, we're being exposed to it here in these workbook lessons. So these lessons teach us in such a way that there is no excuse for us to say, I don't know who I am. No, you join in these lessons. One lesson a day. It don't take but a few days. You begin to hear the song of heaven. You begin to join in with the course You begin to embrace your true reality as having equality with God and with each other and with all creation. Even the animal kingdom on this planet, even the vegetation kingdom on this planet, the trees, even the sun and the moon and the stars and the sky and the heavens, every other created thing beside humanity knows that humanity is the God of this world. Knows that humanity is the source of its life. They are not here. Oh, we're not here. Put it to you this way. We're not here because of them. They are here because of us. They're here because of you. Even the Bible makes reference to it, that the trees of the field clap their hands because they know who you are. When you go to the ocean shore, every wave that comes to the shore, it bows at your feet. You ever notice that? The leaves that fall from the trees, they provide a soft place for you to step. They know who you are. Every creeping thing that we are afraid of, and we're afraid of many, they know who you are. And they're really perplexed that we're afraid of them. Every fowl in the air, every lily in the field, they know who you are. They know you are God's creation. You're God's highest creation. And that you're perfect and you're complete and you're whole. But we don't know it. But we are here in this moment, in this time, with this voice from Truly Foundation. That's what it was created for us to teach these advanced spiritual realities so that humanity can wake up to the truth of who he is before he destroys his physical self. He can't destroy his real self. You can't destroy what God created. But what you can do is have a hellish nightmare of destroying the physical self. And that's what we've been doing. Of bringing pain and anguish and suffering, unneeded suffering, insane. What we've been doing through history, it's been insanity. And it don't look like I'm gonna get to this lesson today. And maybe it wasn't for me to get to it, but it sets up the lesson. And I don't know, my heart goes out to everyone that feels so uncomfortable here, everyone that feels so unfairly treated, everyone that is suffering needlessly, that don't have a vision for reality. And where there's no vision, we suffer needlessly. The scripture says, where there's no vision, the people perish. And we die like mere men. And we're not mere men or women. But where there is vision, where there is the mind of God, where there is the vision of Christ, there's liberty, there's freedom, there's purpose. We understand our function and our role. In God's plan for salvation. What is God's plan for salvation? It can't happen without you and me. and it must start with you and me, where that we embrace the reality of our oneness with God. And in that embracing, our self-image it's been thrown away. The image that we made of ourselves, we walk away from it. Because it only brought us what? Death, pain, and suffering. And now we embrace this image that was already given to us at creation. And we begin to know ourselves as the innocent, sinless, guiltless creation of God. And it brings a smile. It brings joy. It brings peace. When our thinking get right, guess what? When you begin to think this way, all of the fear begin to just leave you. All of the grievances that you may have been holding, they begin to leave you. All of the sense of separation, it begins to walk away. And even our bodies become these healthy, serviceable instruments. Will serve us well. Our bodies will begin to serve us well. The pain and the suffering that the body shared through our thinking, the pain in our bodies, which when we go through this workbook lesson, you'll understand what it's saying. It says pain is a wrong perspective. Pain only becomes present in our life because of wrong thinking. Pain is an indication that we're thinking wrong. It doesn't mean that anything has gone wrong in your body, but it's all in our thinking. But once we embrace the truth of who we are, even our bodies begin to be healthy, serviceable instruments so that we can do what we've been called to do. In health. I'll read this first paragraph, then I'm going home. So the lesson here, or the idea, or the thought is, I choose joy of God instead of pain. It's a choice. Everything about your life has been a choice. Your whole life has been a result of your and my choices. We need to own up to that and quit blaming it on something outside of us. No, we have the power to choose. We have established that, and no one can take that away from us. So here it says, pain is a wrong perspective. That means it's a wrong perspective. We have the wrong perspective on pain, where it comes from, why it is here, why we experience it. So we have the wrong perspective on it. It says, when it is experienced in any form, when pain is experienced in any form, it is a proof of self-deception. So pain comes from self-deception. It comes from self-deception. It comes from wrong perspective. It's not that we're not in that moment, we're not having the perspective of God. We don't have the perception of God. We have a self-deception. It says it is not a fact at all. What is not a fact? Pain is not a fact. Like God is a fact. You are a fact. Meaning God is consistent. God is eternal. God is unchanging. God is unalterable. So are you. What God created you to truly be is unalterable, it's changeless, it's eternal, it's the truth, it's the one law of God. It can't be altered. So it's not a fact. Who you are is not only a fact, you are a matter of fact. You have equality with God. God is a matter of fact. And so are you. But pain is not a fact. It says, there is no form that pain takes that will not disappear if seen aright. If understood with the right perception, with the right understanding. If understood and seen through the eyes of God, through the eyes of truth, through the eyes of your reality. He said, there is no pain There is no form that it takes that will not disappear if it's seen aright, if we get our perception correctly. It says, for pain proclaims God cruel. That's the perception that we have, that where there is pain, why would God create something that produces pain? Why would God create us like this? I mean, that thought had crossed all of us. Why would we be in these frail bodies that get sick and die, and these bodies that, pain? Most people live racked with pain, a lot of people. And they wonder why. Why did you do this to me? That's the thoughts that we think. So his saying is that that's the wrong perspective. And that's why the pain is there. The pain is not there. The pain is an effect of a way of our thinking. All sickness and disease, pain, suffering comes from our thinking. We have to embrace that. It doesn't come from without. It comes from within. And not within the physicality, but within the mentality. That's why Jesus said, let this mind be in you that was also in me. Because if you don't let this mind be in you that was also in me, you're going to experience pain and suffering and anguish and anxiety. And we all experience that. There was a time in my life that I was so racked with fear in my mind. So racked with fear. I know what I'm talking about. I was on the edge of saying that in my thinking that God punished me. That's how even lower than that you can go. Some people are living even with more damnable thoughts than that. Their perception is wrong. But it's not a fact. It's wrong thinking. It's wrong perception. For pain proclaim God's cruel. How could it be real in any form? How could pain be real in any form? It witnesses to God the Father's hatred of his son, the sinfulness he sees in him, and the insane desire for revenge and death. That's the thought we have. That's the thought that we play with when we don't have the thoughts of God. We think God is responsible for this world being the way it is. We think God is responsible for all our struggles, all of our pain and suffering. We think that way. As a result of not knowing the truth of who we are. It's a wrong perspective. But if I move down to paragraph 5, and I'm going to finish there, it says, it is our thoughts alone that causes us pain. Our thought alone that causes us pain. It was our choice alone that causes us pain. And we're choosing wrongly. Or we're making choices of error. But error can be corrected. And that's why we're going through this whole study, this whole workbook lesson. And I'm going to have to put a pin in it right there, because if not, I'll keep going. Come back and join me tomorrow as I finish workbook lesson 190 out of A Course in Miracles. Thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Until tomorrow, remember, you have equality with your Father, the Creator God, and you have equality with each other. Think about that. Bye-bye.